What if the world's most wanted child murder suspect wasn't caught, but instead quietly removed from the FBI's 10 most wanted list in 2025? What if a man once accused of kidnapping, raping, and killing a 5-year-old girl suddenly no longer met the criteria, yet still remained a fugitive, still armed, still dangerous, and still wanted by the law? What does that even mean? And why now, after more than 2 decades of unanswered questions? This is the story of Alexis Flores, a man with multiple names, an unclear past, and a horrific accusation tied to a crime that shocked an entire community. It begins in the summer of 2000 in Philadelphia. A handyman known only as Carlos had been staying temporarily with a local family. He was quiet, seemingly harmless, a stranger who needed a place to sleep. Days later, 5-year-old Iriana DeJesus disappeared. A city panicked. Families held their children close. And when her body was discovered in a nearby basement, strangled and left behind as though she were nothing, investigators scrambled to make sense of the horror. Suspicion turned to the man the family had offered shelter. The quiet drifter vanished immediately after her disappearance. He was gone before questions could be asked. No real name, no real background, just a shadow in the city. For years, he slipped through the cracks until a break came from an unexpected place. A 2004 arrest in Arizona for forgery and shoplifting. Police collected DNA from the man they believed was Mario Roberto Flores or Alex Contreras, or whichever name he used that week. When that DNA was matched against evidence collected from the 2000 crime scene, the truth slammed into investigators like a freight train. This man, Mario, was actually the suspect known as the drifter Carlos. His real name? Alexis Flores. A warrant was issued in Pennsylvania in 2007, followed by a federal unlawful flight warrant. Soon after, the FBI added him to their infamous 10 most wanted list. The reward grew. The appeals for the public's help grew. Age progression photos emerged. Leads appeared and evaporated. He had been deported to Honduras in 2005, but after that, he simply vanished. For nearly 2 decades, Flores' face was one of the most circulated fugitive images in the world. A suspected child murderer. A DNA match. And then, in 2025, the FBI quietly removed him from the 10 most wanted list. No press conference. No extensive explanation. Just a notice stating he no longer met the criteria. But what criteria? He wasn't captured. He wasn't cleared. He wasn't proven dead. His case wasn't solved. The child victim's family never received justice. So how does a man accused of that level of brutality simply fall off a list meant to prioritize the most dangerous criminals? More importantly, why? When agencies say a fugitive no longer meets criteria, it raises questions the public is rarely allowed to hear answered. Was there evidence that changed the internal classification of the case? Did political or diplomatic tensions affect his priority level? Was the case seen as too old, too cold, too distant from any current investigative lead? Or worse, was this an administrative attempt to quietly reduce public pressure on a case that has haunted law enforcement for decades? One working theory suggests that as new threats emerge, terror suspects, cartel leaders, large-scale criminal networks, the top 10 becomes a competitive space. Only 10 names can be displayed. Agencies may feel compelled to cycle out long cold cases to spotlight fugitives who fit modern threat assessments. But is that justice? Does the age of a case determine its worth? And how can a suspected child murderer be less urgent than those newly added? Another theory speculates operational fatigue. 25 years have passed. Leads may have all been exhausted. Tips dwindled. Flores hasn't surfaced in any credible way. Could the FBI believe he's hiding in a region where U.S. agents have limited access, making him almost impossible to capture without major international cooperation? If so, does removing him from the 10 most wanted list reduce embarrassment for authorities who haven't been able to bring him in? And then there's the uncomfortable possibility, a quiet bureaucratic cover-up. Not the Hollywood kind. No secret files, no cloak and dagger meetings. Instead, a subtle avoidance tactic. When a case remains unsolved for decades, public pressure becomes a burden. Media questions become reminders. Families demand answers. And an agency, already juggling thousands of cases, may decide it's easier to demote the case publicly and continue the search less visibly. Yet even after his removal, the FBI still labels him armed and extremely dangerous. They still offer a substantial reward. They still list him as wanted for murder, kidnapping, unlawful restraint, and flight from prosecution. Nothing about the charges has changed. Nothing about the evidence has changed. Nothing about the crime has softened. If he no longer meets the criteria for the list, what criteria have changed? And who benefits from that change? Authorities haven't provided details. No updated analysis. No full briefing. No indication the case has advanced. Families of victims often rely on public awareness to keep pressure on cold cases. So, what happens when awareness is quietly lowered? There is also a legal dimension. If Flores is indeed in Honduras, extradition could be complicated. Some countries refuse to extradite suspects facing life sentences. Others require special diplomatic agreements. It's possible that behind closed doors, agencies concluded that capturing him, or prosecuting him, would face obstacles too steep to justify the top 10 spotlight. But wouldn't the public deserve to know that? Shouldn't transparency matter in a case like this? In 2024, the FBI released a new age-progressed image of Flores. That means they believed he was alive, and that he could still be found. So how does 1 year lead from renewed public interest to removal from the highest fugitive category the next? Was there new intel? A change in leadership? A strategic reshuffling? The lack of answers forces us to rely on the evidence we do have. A brutal crime, DNA proof linking him to the scene, a history of flight, and a fugitive status that has not changed. He is still wanted, still charged, still out there, and still dangerous. All of this leaves the victim's family in a void. 25 years have passed since the loss of their child. Justice remains out of reach. And now the suspect receives less attention than before. For them, the removal is not just bureaucratic, it is personal. So we're left with the most haunting question of all. If a child's killer can fall off the world's most wanted list without being captured, what else can happen quietly, without public oversight, without accountability? Because justice doesn't disappear when headlines fade. And fugitives don't lose their danger when lists change. Alexis Flores is still out there, still wanted, still unpunished. And until the day he is found, every unanswered question around his removal from that list remains a shadow over the systems meant to protect us. A shadow the public deserves to see clearly. And so the question remains, was this a strategic move, a resource adjustment, or something more unsettling, an intentional quieting of a case that has gone on too long? Only those behind the decision know the full truth. But one thing is certain, as long as the suspect walks free, the story isn't over. And neither is the pursuit.